Alien bullies slap the new human teacher and are shocked to discover she's a deadly martial artist. The starport of Caro's Prime gleamed under the soft glow of its orbital suns. Ships from dozens of worlds slid across the sky like bright fish in a dark sea. Mara Vance adjusted the strap of her bag as she walked through the busy terminal. She had been assigned to the Interstellar Preparatory Academy, a place where young cadets from multiple species trained to become the leaders and officers of tomorrow. Humans were rare here. Most species saw them as weak, fragile, and polite to a fault. Mara, however, had a secret her students could never guess. Her first impression of the academy was exactly what she expected. The corridors were wide, polished, and filled with beings whose size and shape could unsettle even the most confident human. There were towering creatures with arms like tree trunks, scaled beings whose tails swayed like snakes, and creatures with more limbs than a spider. All of them were in uniforms, their colors denoting rank, house, and specialty. And in the middle of all of them, Mara looked like any other human, small, average build, neatly dressed in her teaching uniform, and carrying nothing but her bag of notes and calm confidence. The entrance hall was loud with chatter, footsteps, and the occasional sharp command from a faculty member. Mara's sensors picked up dozens of curious glances directed at her. Some were polite, some skeptical, and a few openly mocking. She ignored them, walking straight to the administration office to sign in. She had been briefed. Humans were considered mentally adept but physically limited. The cadets thought humans relied on machines and law, not strength. She found it amusing, if only they knew. Her first day of classes started with a small lecture hall. The walls were lined with screens showing historical battles, maps of various systems, and famous leaders from multiple species. Mara stepped to the front of the room and looked at the gathered cadets. They were all taller, stronger, and more imposing than she could ever hope to be. Some even leaned back in their chairs with casual arrogance. One group of particularly large alien cadets sat together, whispering and laughing under their breaths. Mara felt a twinge of curiosity more than concern. "Good morning," Mara said, her voice calm and clear. "I am Dr. Mara Vance, your new instructor for conflict ethics and tactical history. Today, we will discuss leadership, discipline, and understanding the difference between power and restraint." A heavy-set cadet, his arms thick like braided vines and eyes like polished stone, snorted loudly. "And what do you know about power, little human? You look like you couldn't lift a training blade." The other cadets laughed. Mara smiled faintly. "Power isn't always strength. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is understanding. Sometimes it is knowing when not to use your strength." She paused, letting her words settle in the hall. Some cadets rolled their eyes, some leaned forward. The heavy-set cadet stood abruptly. "We'll see about that, won't we?" he said, stepping closer. His fingers twitched in anticipation. The room quieted slightly. Other students sensed the tension. Mara stayed where she was, her posture calm and unshaken. Before anyone could intervene, the cadet slapped her across the face. The sound echoed through the room. A hush fell over the students. Faculty members in the back stiffened. Mara's cheek tingled, but she did not flinch. She placed her hand lightly over her face, tilted her head, and asked softly, "Was that an attack or a lesson?" The room went completely silent. Even the mocking laughter of his companions vanished. The cadet stared at her, expecting fear, expecting anger. Instead, he saw only calm, measured observation. Mara slowly removed her badge and placed it on the table in front of her. "I think," she said, "this is the perfect moment for a demonstration." The cadets exchanged puzzled glances. "A demonstration," one whispered. Mara nodded. "A demonstration of human self-defense doctrine. If you wish to test your strength, I will show you how humans defend themselves." The heavy-set cadet laughed, a booming, confident sound. "You defend yourself against me?" his friend snickered. The other cadets began forming a circle around Mara. Cameras hovered, ready to record every movement. Faculty watched silently, curious and cautious. Mara raised her hand slowly, not as a threat but as a statement. She stood balanced, feet slightly apart, weight centered, eyes sharp and calm. The cadets moved closer, circling her. Mara's mind ran quickly. She calculated distances, angles, momentum. She was tiny compared to them, but she had trained in environments where size never guaranteed safety. Humans had survived countless predators, natural disasters, and wars using skill, intelligence, and precision. This was no different. The first cadet lunged forward. Mara didn't move back. She shifted slightly, guiding his arm with a touch to the side, and his momentum carried him past her. He stumbled, caught himself, and blinked. Mara's movements were smooth, flowing, almost dance-like, but every shift controlled energy, redirected force, and maintained balance. Another cadet tried a low sweep. Mara stepped lightly, redirected the force with her hip, and the cadet tripped over his own legs. Whispers filled the room. Mara continued, demonstrating not strength but control. Every attempt to overpower her ended in careful, controlled redirection. The cadets were strong, but they were not coordinated like she was. A few students began to take notes mentally, even while hiding their surprise. Mara spoke softly as she moved, her voice calm over the murmurs. This is not about hurting others. It is about controlling the situation. If you act without thought, you lose. If you act without respect, you fail. Humans have survived by mastering themselves first. The demonstration lasted only a few minutes, but it felt like hours to the cadets. By the end, several were on the floor, not hurt, just carefully balanced out of action. The room was silent. Mara stood in the center, calm, composed, not a hair out of place. The heavy-set cadet who had slapped her looked at her with wide eyes, disbelief clear on his face. His friends were quiet, stunned. Even the faculty leaned forward. Mara simply said, "Strength without control is useless. Force without understanding is dangerous. And underestimating someone based on size or appearance is foolish." A ripple of murmurs ran through the classroom. Some cadets whispered, "Humans are skilled." Some nodded slowly. Others just stared. Mara placed her hands behind her back and looked at each cadet in turn. "You have strength, yes, but strength alone does not make you a leader. Discipline, patience, and awareness do." For the rest of the class, Mara taught not just theory but examples. She demonstrated techniques on holographic dummies, explained how humans survived in countless dangerous environments, and shared the human philosophy of adaptation, observation, and restraint. The cadets listened, some still skeptical, some intrigued. By the end of the lecture, the atmosphere had shifted. The mocking and arrogance were replaced with curiosity and respect. As the cadets left the room, the heavy-set one lingered, still processing what had happened. "I didn't expect that," he muttered. Mara nodded, smiling faintly. "Never underestimate anyone," she replied. "Sometimes the quietest ones have the sharpest skills." Later, in the faculty lounge, word of the demonstration spread quickly. Senior instructors discussed what they had witnessed. Mara's methods were unconventional but effective. The aliens had strength, yes, but humans had something else: unpredictability, adaptability, and controlled skill. The students would remember this day for a long time. Outside, the orbital suns of Kairos Prime dipped lower, casting long shadows across the academy. Mara adjusted her bag, her first day complete. She had not raised her voice, not injured anyone, and yet she had made her point. Humans were not weak. They were subtle, precise, and powerful in ways the galaxy often overlooked. The cadets who had tried to challenge her would think twice before underestimating a human again. And Mara. She walked the corridors with quiet confidence, already planning her next lesson, knowing that in this galaxy, humans had more to teach than anyone suspect. The next morning, the academy was buzzing more than usual. Word of Dr. Mara Vance's demonstration had spread quickly among the cadets. Some whispered with admiration, some with disbelief, and a few with fear. The human teacher, who seemed so small and quiet, had moved with precision, control, and skill that none of the alien cadets could match. Many of them had never seen anyone so calm while being challenged by much larger opponents. Mara arrived at the lecture hall with her usual calm demeanor. She noticed the heavy-set cadet from yesterday lingering near the doorway. His posture was uncertain and his usual confident smirk was gone. Mara nodded politely as she walked past. "Good morning," she said simply. The cadet hesitated, then muttered, "Good morning, ma'am." As the class began, Mara decided to continue where she had left off. Today's lesson was on strategy, not just in physical conflict, but in leadership and thinking ahead. She moved across the room with measured steps, speaking clearly so everyone could follow. "Humans often face challenges that seem impossible," she said. "We are not the strongest, the fastest, or the largest species in the galaxy, but we survive, we adapt, and we win because we think, observe, and act with precision." Several cadets scribbled notes, trying to understand how a species they considered weak could survive in the galaxy's harshest environments. The heavy-set cadet raised his hand, tentatively. "Ma'am, if humans are so clever, why do you need combat skills like that?" Mara smiled faintly. "Because cleverness alone is not always enough. Understanding how to defend yourself, how to control a situation gives you options, and options give you freedom." Her words seemed to hang in the air. Some cadets whispered to one another, realizing they had underestimated humans not just physically, but mentally as well. Mara walked to the front of the room and gestured to a holographic training dummy. "Let me show you something," she said. She moved with the same calm precision as yesterday. Cadets who watched closely could see the difference between raw strength and trained skill. Mara demonstrated how humans used leverage, balance, and anticipation to redirect an opponent's energy. Every movement was controlled and efficient. She did not strike with unnecessary force. Instead, she used technique to neutralize simulated attacks. One cadet, taller than Mara by at least a head, attempted to replicate the movements. He stumbled immediately, unable to maintain the balance and flow Mara displayed. Another tried to challenge the technique with brute strength, but he too was gently but firmly guided aside by the principles she taught. The class was silent, absorbing each lesson. By the end of the demonstration, even the most skeptical cadets were impressed. Mara paused and spoke to the room. "Humans are not dangerous because we seek conflict. We are dangerous because we understand it, and we do not fear it. That is a choice every species can make if they choose to master themselves first." After class, the heavy-set cadet approached Mara. He had spent the night thinking about yesterday's events. I think I understand now," he said. "I didn't know humans could move like that. I didn't know we could be so careful but strong at the same time." Mara nodded. "You understand more than you realize. Strength is easy, control is hard, and mastery is rare." In the following days, Mara continued to teach both theory and practice. She introduced concepts of observation, anticipation, and strategic thinking. Cadets who had once laughed now watched her carefully, respecting her not out of fear, but out of understanding. She showed them that intelligence and patience were as much tools as claws, scales, or muscle. News of her lessons reached the Academy administration and even the station's security command. Officers reviewed the recordings of Mara's demonstrations and recognized her techniques immediately. Humans had developed unique defensive strategies over centuries, designed to give them an advantage despite their physical limitations. It became clear that the small, quiet instructor was not only skilled, but had extensive experience training humans in situations far more dangerous than any academy challenge. One morning, the academy principal, a tall being with smooth silver skin and luminous eyes, visited Mara's classroom. He observed silently as Mara guided a group of cadets through controlled exercises. After the session, he approached her. "Doctor Vance," he said, "it seems humans are not as fragile as our records suggested. Your skills are remarkable." Mara inclined her head politely. "Thank you. Humans survive because we must. Every challenge is an opportunity to learn, and every mistake teaches us more than success ever could." The principal nodded thoughtfully. "I believe our curriculum could benefit from your methods, not only combat techniques but your philosophy. The cadets need to learn that power is not just muscle and force, but strategy, patience, and restraint." Mara smiled. "That is exactly what I intend to teach." Back in the classroom, the atmosphere had changed completely. Cadets who once bullied or ignored her now sought her guidance. The heavy-set cadet who had slapped her was among the first to step forward, eager to learn rather than challenge. "Ma'am, could you help me with my balance and timing?" he asked. Mara nodded and guided him patiently, showing how slight adjustments could make his movements far more effective. Over the weeks, Mara's influence spread beyond the classroom. Cadets discussed her lessons among themselves, trying to understand the human approach to challenges. Her reputation grew quietly but steadily. Humans were no longer considered weak. They were subtle, precise, and powerful in ways that most species had never imagined. Mara never boasted, never raised her voice, but her presence alone commanded respect. One afternoon, a group of cadets approached her with a question. "Ma'am, why don't humans use more force? You could have easily overpowered us all yesterday," one asked. Mara smiled. "Force is easy to apply. It is predictable and often wasted. Control is more difficult. It requires observation, patience, and skill. That is why we choose to master ourselves first. Strength without control can create more problems than it solves." Her words resonated with the cadets. They began to see that their own species' reliance on raw power was limited. Humans had found a way to survive and thrive without brute strength, and in doing so, had developed skills that were extraordinary. As months passed, Mara's teaching methods became a standard part of the academy's curriculum. Former bullies became students eager to learn. Holographic training simulations included human defensive techniques, and lectures on strategy and patience became highly respected. The small human instructor had not only survived in an intimidating environment, but had transformed it. One evening, Mara stood alone on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Ships glimmered against the darkness, each carrying beings from countless worlds. She reflected on the journey so far. Humans were small, yes, and vulnerable in appearance, but they were adaptable, clever, and persistent. That combination made them formidable in ways that few species could fully appreciate. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "Ma'am, may I join you?" The heavy-set cadet from before stepped up beside her, a new respect in his eyes. Mara nodded. "Of course." He looked out at the stars with her, quietly thoughtful. "I never thought I'd learn so much from a human," he admitted. Mara smiled. "Humans are often underestimated," she said. "But when you take the time to understand them, you realize that our weakness is only visible if you don't see the strength beneath it." The cadet nodded, understanding at last. Across the galaxy, humans had a reputation for being clever and resourceful, but here on Kairos Prime, Mara had shown them that humans were also disciplined, skilled, and unexpectedly powerful. The lesson went beyond combat or strategy. It was about respect, patience, and the quiet strength that comes from mastery of oneself. As Mara returned to her quarters, the cadets in the academy passed by quietly, giving her nods of acknowledgement. They no longer saw a fragile human. They saw a teacher, a master, and a force that commanded attention through calm skill rather than intimidation. Humans were no longer underestimated here. By the end of the semester, the Interstellar Preparatory Academy had changed in subtle but important ways. Cadets trained with a new understanding of what strength truly meant. They approached challenges with observation first, patience second, and force last. Mara's lessons had planted seeds of respect for humans across species that were previously unthinkable. On the final day before the next term, Mara stood at the front of the classroom looking at her students. Some smiled, some nodded, all attentive. "Remember," she said softly, "strength is only as useful as the mind and heart behind it. Master yourself and you can face any challenge, no matter how big or powerful it seems." The cadets left the classroom inspired, ready to apply the lessons in simulations, training grounds, and beyond. Mara watched them go, a sense of quiet satisfaction in her chest. She had not only taught them combat skills, but she had changed the way they thought. Humanity had been underestimated, but no longer. The stars outside continued to shine, endless and bright. And somewhere in that vast galaxy, humans were quietly proving that size, strength, or species were never the measure of true power. Skill, discipline, and intellect mattered more, and Mara Vance had made sure everyone at Caro's Prime understood it. The morning sun cast pale light across the sprawling academy campus. Students moved in groups, carrying books, training equipment, and the quiet confidence that had begun to bloom after months of lessons with Dr. Mara Vance. Rumors of the human instructor's skill had spread far beyond her classroom. Cadets whispered about how the smallest species in the galaxy could control, redirect, and outthink creatures far stronger and larger than themselves. Mara walked the corridors with her usual calm, observing quietly. She was aware of every glance, every hesitant step of the cadets around her. Her first goal had been to earn respect through demonstration. That had been achieved. Now, her next mission was to challenge the cadets' minds, not just their bodies. She believed that intelligence, creativity, and teamwork could often surpass raw physical strength. The Academy had arranged a simulation tournament for this semester. Teams of cadets from different species would navigate a series of complex scenarios designed to test strategy, cooperation, and adaptability. Mara had volunteered to observe and guide the human-influenced techniques that were slowly being integrated into training. She was not allowed to participate directly, but her presence alone caused a stir. In the first arena, cadets faced a maze filled with moving barriers, traps, and holographic enemies programmed to strike on sight. Teams that relied solely on brute force often failed. The stronger species bulldozed through obstacles, only to trigger traps and lose valuable time. Humans, however, demonstrated a subtle approach, observing patterns, predicting movements, and using leverage to redirect obstacles safely. The heavyset cadet who had once mocked Mara now led a team, his eyes scanning each corner, his hands carefully guiding smaller cadets through the maze. "Wait," he said calmly, stopping his team as a barrier swung down. "Watch the timing. Don't rush." His voice, steady and confident, carried authority without aggression. Other cadets glanced at him in surprise. The student who had once been a bully had learned the human lesson well. Control, observation, and patience were more effective than force. Mara stood at the observation deck, arms crossed, her calm presence commanding attention from nearby instructors. She noted how cadets adapted Mara's philosophy to their strengths. One quadrupedal alien used speed to cover gaps, while another used multiple limbs to lift and redirect barriers. Every movement seemed choreographed, efficient, and purposeful. Mara's influence had turned a competition into a display of harmony between strength and intelligence. By the second round, cadets faced a simulated boarding scenario. Their ship had been invaded by a rogue faction, represented by drones and holograms. Many teams charged in recklessly, crashing into walls or colliding with one another. Mara watched, silently noting the mistakes. Then the heavyset cadets team entered. "Check the angles," he instructed. "Move quietly, cover each other. Don't rush." The team followed, using small human-inspired techniques to control movement, anticipate the drone's paths, and neutralize threats without unnecessary collisions or chaos. They completed the scenario efficiently, earning the highest score of the round. Some instructors even whispered to one another about how a human philosophy had transformed the cadets' approach. After the exercise, Mara addressed all the teams. "Strength alone is rarely enough," she said. "Planning, teamwork, and patience can turn what seems like a disadvantage into an advantage. Humans have survived for centuries by doing this. They adapt, they observe, and they act with care. You have the opportunity to do the same." Her words carried weight. The cadets began discussing strategies among themselves, considering new approaches instead of relying on sheer force. A sense of respect for humans spread through the academy. Many realized that what they had once considered a weak species had, in fact, mastered survival through intelligence, patience, and skill. Later that week, the Academy announced a special challenge: an interspecies expedition to a nearby asteroid field. Teams would navigate treacherous terrain, avoid environmental hazards, and retrieve strategic resources. The field was known for unpredictable gravity shifts and hidden crevices. Most species would rely on brute strength or raw endurance, but Mara's students had a different plan. The heavyset cadets team approached the first asteroid, moving cautiously. "Check the surface," he instructed. "Use observation first." They carefully tested footing and mapped potential hazards. One small alien leaned heavily on its strength and nearly triggered a fissure, but the team worked together to stabilize the situation using principles Mara had taught them: leverage, timing, and coordination. Mara observed from her station, quietly approving. The cadets moved with precision, adapting constantly to changes in the environment. Each challenge highlighted the HFY theme. Humans had not only survived through intellect and skill, but they had taught others to do the same. Even creatures stronger, faster, or more durable now learned to respect the human approach. As the expedition progressed, a sudden gravitational shift caused one cadet to slip dangerously toward a crevice. Instantly, the heavyset cadet reacted, using Mara's techniques to redirect and stabilize his teammate without injury. The others followed suit, moving efficiently and carefully. When they finally reached the target area, they collected the resources faster than any other team, their methodical approach proving superior to brute force. Back at the academy, Mara addressed the cadets. "This is the difference between strength and skill," she said. "Strength can carry you part of the way. Skill, teamwork, and patience carry you all the way. Humans have survived by mastering these skills. And now, you are beginning to understand why humans are formidable, even without natural weapons or size advantages." The cadets listened intently. Even the skeptics nodded. Many realized that underestimating humans had been a mistake, one that could cost them dearly in the galaxy's larger challenges. Mara's lessons had become a foundation, teaching that intelligence, discipline, and controlled action were as important, if not more, than raw physical power. In the following weeks, Mara introduced advanced exercises, combining strategy, observation, and quick decision-making. Cadets were challenged to predict opponents' actions, coordinate with teammates across species, and solve complex problems without resorting to brute force. Her guidance emphasized creativity, adaptability, and leadership. The students thrived, exceeding expectations and forming bonds that transcended their differences. The heavy-set cadet, once a bully, became a model student. He now encouraged others, shared lessons, and applied Mara's philosophy both in practice and in thought. His transformation was a testament to the HFY theme. Humans could inspire, guide, and teach strength beyond what raw power could achieve. Other cadets followed his example, and the academy began to change at a fundamental level. One evening, Mara stood in the central courtyard, watching the sunset over Caro's Prime. Students practiced quietly around her, demonstrating the techniques and philosophies they had learned. She reflected on how far the cadets had come. From mockery and doubt, they had grown into disciplined, thoughtful leaders who understood the value of patience, intelligence, and controlled skill. A small group of cadets approached her, led by the heavyset one. "Ma'am," he said, "we've been talking. We want to continue learning human techniques even outside class. Can we study with you?" Mara smiled. "Of course. Learning never stops. Humans are adaptable, but we always seek improvement. You are welcome to do the same." The cadets nodded, inspired. They had learned that true power was not just muscle or size. It was patience, observation, intelligence, and discipline. Mara had not only taught them skills, she had reshaped their perspective, showing that even the smallest species could wield influence far beyond expectations. Across the academy, Mara's influence continued to grow. Cadets shared her philosophy in their dorms, their training sessions, and even in informal discussions. Respect for humans became widespread, and the HFY lesson was clear. Underestimated does not mean incapable. Skill, intelligence, and calm determination could overcome any apparent disadvantage. By the end of the semester, Mara's students were transformed. The heavyset cadet led teams with confidence, smaller species moved with precision, and all cadets displayed patience and strategic thinking. Mara knew that the seeds she had planted would continue to grow. Humans were no longer the quiet, fragile species the galaxy thought they were. They were adaptable, skilled, and quietly formidable. As Mara prepared to leave the academy for the day, she paused at the observation deck, looking at the stars. Ships moved through space like bright threads on a dark tapestry. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges, but humans had proven that intellect, patience, and skill could turn even the smallest of beings into forces to be respected. Mara smiled quietly, knowing that her students now carried a part of that legacy forward. And in that moment, the lesson was clear. Humans were underestimated for too long, but they had mastered survival, strategy, and skill in ways that no one could ignore. Karo's Prime had learned it firsthand, and the galaxy would soon have to learn it too. Weeks passed at the Interstellar Preparatory Academy, and the atmosphere had transformed. Mara Vance's influence was everywhere, from classrooms to training grounds. Cadets of all species now spoke of humans with quiet respect, no longer dismissing them as fragile. Mara walked through the halls with the same calm, attentive gaze, observing the subtle changes she had inspired. She could see teamwork, patience, and strategy replacing brashness and overconfidence. The Academy's administration had arranged a special interstellar mission for select cadets, a reconnaissance exercise on a nearby uninhabited planet. The exercise would test not only physical and mental abilities, but also leadership, cooperation, and decision-making under unexpected circumstances. Mara had been invited to observe and advise, though she was not officially part of any team. Her presence, however, was enough to influence the cadets' preparation. The heavy-set cadet who had once mocked Mara now led one of the teams. His movements were confident, his instructions clear, and his demeanor calm. His team included cadets from multiple species, all trained in human-inspired methods of observation, patience, and controlled action. They packed supplies, checked equipment, and reviewed mission protocols carefully, guided by the principles Mara had instilled in them. When the teams arrived at the uninhabited planet, they were greeted by a harsh landscape. Rocky cliffs, uneven terrain, and sudden gusts of wind challenged the cadets immediately. Many species struggled, relying on brute strength to climb or push through obstacles, often losing balance or equipment. Mara watched from a secure observation point, noting the differences between those who followed human techniques and those who did not. The heavyset cadets team approached a steep ridge. "Take your time," he instructed, echoing Mara's lessons. Check your footing, anticipate the terrain, and move together. They ascended slowly but efficiently, using coordination and leverage rather than raw power. One of the smaller alien cadets slipped briefly, but the team quickly stabilized them without panic. The cadets' calm efficiency impressed even the station instructors observing the mission remotely. Mara smiled quietly. The same principles she had demonstrated in the classroom were now being applied in the field. Observation, patience, and precise action turned a difficult challenge into a manageable task. Humans had survived for centuries using these methods, and now her students were experiencing the same advantage firsthand. As the mission progressed, the teams encountered unexpected challenges. A sudden dust storm reduced visibility, making navigation hazardous. Many cadets relied on their species' natural abilities to push forward, but Mara's human-inspired team slowed, communicated constantly, and used environmental cues to maintain orientation. They reached the designated checkpoints ahead of others, demonstrating that careful planning and controlled action could surpass raw strength. Midway through the exercise, the teams discovered an unstable ravine. Some cadets panicked, trying to leap across or force the terrain, triggering small rockfalls. Mara's team paused. "Assess the situation," the heavyset cadet instructed. "Look for safe points, use teamwork, and adapt." They identified a stable path and used ropes and careful steps to cross safely. Each cadet contributed, using their unique abilities in combination with human strategy. The result was a successful crossing with no injuries. Mara observed quietly, noting how the cadets' approach reflected her teaching. Humans had survived countless hazards, from natural disasters to interspecies conflicts, not because they were the strongest, but because they were adaptive, intelligent, and disciplined. Her students were now applying the same principles, proving the HFY philosophy in practice. At one point, the cadets reached an area with treacherous quicksand-like soil. Many species tried to rush across, becoming stuck or forcing others to assist. Mara's team assessed the risk, using poles and precise steps to distribute weight evenly. One cadet moved slowly, testing each spot before stepping. Another provided support, ready to adjust if necessary. They crossed safely, their efficiency in stark contrast to the chaos of other teams. By the time the teams returned to the landing zone, Mara's human-inspired group had not only completed the mission, but had done so with minimal errors. The instructors reviewed the results with amazement. Strength alone had failed many cadets, but careful planning, teamwork, and disciplined execution had ensured success. Mara's methods were not just effective, they were transformative. After the exercise, Mara gathered the cadets. "You have done well," she said. "Remember, the galaxy is full of challenges that cannot be overcome by force alone. Observation, patience, and coordination allow you to succeed where others fail. Humans have survived and thrived because we have mastered these skills, and now you are beginning to understand why." The cadets listened intently. Even those who had been skeptical at the beginning of the semester now nodded in understanding. The lessons Mara taught were no longer abstract concepts. They were proven strategies that could be applied in real situations. The heavy-set cadet approached Mara privately. "Ma'am," he said, "I understand now why humans are respected, even when we thought you were weak. It's not just skill, it's patience, planning, and seeing the situation clearly before acting." Mara nodded. "Exactly. Strength without understanding can be dangerous. Mastery comes from control, knowledge, and discipline. That is what makes humans formidable." In the following weeks, Mara introduced more advanced exercises at the academy. Cadets learned to anticipate opponents' actions, coordinate across species, and solve complex problems with creative solutions. Each lesson emphasized skill, strategy, and teamwork over brute force. Mara encouraged the cadets to reflect on their actions, to understand both their strengths and weaknesses, and to value intelligence alongside strength. The heavy-set cadet continued to excel, setting an example for others. He encouraged his peers, shared strategies, and applied human-inspired methods in ways that demonstrated leadership. Other cadets followed, showing that humans had not only taught technique but had instilled a philosophy of controlled, intelligent action. Mara's influence extended beyond the classroom and training grounds. Instructors began adopting elements of her teaching, integrating strategy, observation, and restraint into their own programs. The academy as a whole began to change. Strength was no longer the sole measure of a cadet's ability. Intelligence, planning, and disciplined action became equally valued. One day, Mara received a communication from the academy principal. "Dr. Vance," he said, "your methods have reshaped the training program. Cadets are performing better, thinking more strategically, and working together across species more effectively than ever before. Your approach has proven invaluable." Mara responded with quiet humility. "Thank you. Humans have survived by mastering themselves first. If others can learn from that, the galaxy becomes safer and more capable." Later, Mara walked through the training grounds, watching cadets practice coordinated exercises. She saw smaller species supporting larger ones, faster species compensating for slower teammates, and all of them communicating clearly and calmly. Her teachings were no longer a novelty. They had become a standard approach. The heavy-set cadet approached again. "Ma'am, I've been thinking," he said. "Humans seem weak, but when I see the way you move and teach, I realize we misjudge strength. True power isn't about muscle, it's about knowing what to do and when to do it." Mara smiled. "Exactly. Intelligence, discipline, and strategy often outweigh raw strength. Humans are underestimated for this reason, but those who understand it gain an advantage." Across the academy, Mara's lessons continued to inspire. Cadets shared her teachings with peers, applied them in training, and even developed new techniques based on her principles. The HFY message was clear. Humans might appear small, fragile, or limited, but skill, intellect, and discipline made them formidable in ways that no one could ignore. As the semester drew to a close, Mara stood on the observation deck once more. The stars stretched endlessly across the sky, each a reminder of the vast challenges the galaxy held. Her cadets had grown, transformed by the lessons she imparted. Strength, patience, and strategy now guided their actions. The galaxy was a place where even the smallest beings could leave a mark if they used skill and intelligence wisely. Mara reflected on how far the cadets had come. From mockery and doubt, they had grown into disciplined, thoughtful leaders capable of facing challenges with calm precision. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, but here, at Karo's prime, the perception had changed. Mara's teachings had proven that size, muscle, or natural advantage were not the true measure of power. The heavy-set cadet joined her once more, looking out at the stars. "Ma'am," he said, "I think we've learned more than just techniques. We've learned how to think differently, how to lead, and how to respect others." "Humans are remarkable," Mara nodded. "And that is only the beginning. Remember, the galaxy rewards those who adapt, observe, and act wisely. Humans have survived and thrived by mastering these skills. Now you can too." The cadets continued to practice below, their movements coordinated and precise, their teamwork evident. Mara's lessons had transformed the academy, instilling a philosophy that went beyond strength or species. Her teachings emphasized intelligence, patience, and controlled action, proving that humans were not to be underestimated. As night fell over Karo's prime, Mara stood alone on the observation deck, looking at the countless stars. She knew that the galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but humans had demonstrated that cleverness, skill, and discipline could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. The cadets she taught would carry these lessons forward, spreading respect for humans across the galaxy. And in that quiet moment, Mara understood the full impact of her work. Humans were underestimated no longer, and their philosophy of skill, patience, and intelligence had begun to shape the next generation of galactic leaders. Karos Prime had learned this lesson first, and soon, the entire galaxy would follow.